Details of land put up for sale between July and September, 2 new urban renewal projects in Kowloon, and Obama tries to cool the international frenzy over Snowden.
Good evening. The government has announced it will put up a slew of residential plots for sale between July and September to add about 2,500 units to the housing market. The Secretary for Development says while each plot is quite small, this will encourage smaller developers to bid for the sites.
In the second 3-month period of the current financial year, the government will put up 9 plots of land for sale. The sites are in Sha Tin, Wan Chai, Yuen Long, Sheng Shui, Sha Tao Kok, Tuen Wan, Tuen Mun and Sai Kung. Secretary for Development Paul Chan says he's not worried by the lower than expected price of a site recently offered up in Chung Kwan O.
It is our policy objective to supply land to the market on a consistent and stable basis so that this could help us address the balance in terms of demand and supply of housing units. Our policy will not be affected by the tender price of individual sites. We have no intention to delay our supply of land because of isolated changes or isolated fluctuations in the market.
Surveyor Tony Chan told TVB that recent government attempts to provide land and cool the property market will have less effect in the short term than external factors like interest rate hikes in the US.
I don't think in short term there will be any impact, but in the longer term, when you have a steady stream of supply, it will help to bring forward to an equilibrium of the supply and demand.
The government also released its list of land to be sold this fiscal year. 6 more plots, including one in Kai Tak, have been added. Together, they're expected to provide 1,500 extra units. 3 plots of land in Sha Tin will be handed over to the Housing Authority to provide around 1,700 units of public housing. The government says this will help towards its target of 100,000 public housing units within 5 years of 2018. Originally, the plots sold this financial year, along with various MTR Corporation projects, were estimated to provide over 25,000 residential units. But land put up for sale in the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year will provide no more than 5,000 units. The Secretary for Development said this is because the government needs to change the planning for some of the sites. Paul Chan said there would be more plots released later this year. Etienne Lamy-Smith, TVB News.
The Urban Renewal Authority has launched 2 redevelopment projects in Tai Kok Tsui and Sham Shui Po. Families of subdivided homes in some old buildings there may get up to $100,000 and a public housing flat in compensation. Urban Renewal Authority workers were out and about conducting what they call a freezing survey in this building on Wong Chuk Street in Sham Shui Po today. The survey will determine the residents and owners for compensation purposes in urban renewal projects.
We have a 2-month period for affected tenants or people who wish to provide their comments or objections to URA. Within this 2 months period, after this 2 months period, if there are objections, we'll deal with the objections, and we have to submit our proposal to the Secretary for Development to authorize or decline authorization of the project.
Many living in this 50-year-old building, which has 9 floors but no lifts, hope the project will go ahead. Mrs. Wong says there's always rubbish left in the stairway, with many people moving in and out of the subdivided homes every few months. 2 other buildings up for redevelopment are on Phuc Chak Street in Tai Kok Tsui, which both have many subdivided flats and illegal rooftop homes. The URA is offering those living in subdivided flats a special deal of up to $100,000 and a public housing flat. Happy with this offer, this man says he hopes he will get into public housing soon since he can't afford to live anywhere else. But these demand-led projects need 80% of owners to accept the offer, and whether this building gets the final green light may depend on the owners of the ground floor shops. The chairman of the Owners Corporation of the building says the 4 shop owners hold 1/6 of the shares in the building, so it's easy for them to join forces and fight against it. The 2 projects are relatively small scale, with the area of the sites covering 5,000 and 7,000 square feet respectively. If they go ahead, the URA expects to build about 165 mostly small-sized apartments with an estimated development cost of $1.3 billion. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has dismissed suggestions that some of his principal officials are planning to resign. As Evelina Leung reports, the CE also said he welcomes criticism from the public as long as society is willing to work with his administration.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and Chief Secretary Carrie Lam were among some of the senior officials at the Legislative Council luncheon hosted by the LegCo president today. At the center of attention were rumors that principal officials were planning to resign. The CE dismissed this.
Everyone should give government, including its political team, the space and the time that is needed for us to deliver on the pledges that we made in the election manifesto and also in the policy address. Now, after all, we are here to serve the entire community.
Leung was also asked whether he is worried about the anticipated high turnout in Monday's July 1st rally. He simply said if the members of the society feel the government isn't doing enough, they should be vocal about it. However, the CE also stressed once a problem has been identified, the society has to work with the government to find a solution.
For example, if people feel there's still a lack of public housing or property prices are still too high, the chief executive hopes the society can work together with the government and allow the administration to smoothly change the land use of different plots of land in Hong Kong to increase the supply of housing. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
U.S. President Barack Obama tried to cool the international frenzy over whistleblower Edward Snowden, who he called a 29-year-old hacker. Meanwhile, Ecuador, the country that appears to be Snowden's most likely destination, says it will not buckle to U.S. threats should it grant Snowden asylum. Alan Booknia has more details.
Obama, in Senegal on a 3-nation African tour, sought to lower the temperature of the issue that has raised tensions with both China and Russia. The U.S. accused Hong Kong of deliberate delaying tactics that allowed Snowden to leave the city for Russia. Russia has so far refused to hand Snowden over to U.S. authorities. Obama downplayed the issue.
And I'm not going to have one case of a suspect who we're trying to extradite suddenly being elevated to the point where I've got to start doing wheeling and dealing and trading on a whole host of other issues, simply to get a guy extradited so that he can face the justice system here in the United States.
Snowden, a former systems analyst on contract to the National Security Agency, is wanted in the U.S. on espionage and theft charges after leaking details of U.S. government surveillance programs. He's believed to still be in the transit lounge of a Moscow airport, waiting for documentation that would allow him to fly to Ecuador, where he would ask for asylum. Obama dismissed the suggestion that the U.S. might try to intercept Snowden if he left Moscow by air.
No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker.
In Ecuador, the government expressed anger at U.S. threats of economic punishment should it take in Snowden. Ecuador's president, Rafael Correa, called the U.S. threats blackmail and preemptively rejected millions in trade benefits with the U.S. that Ecuador will lose. He added that the country has yet to decide on granting Snowden asylum should he make it to Ecuadorian territory. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
U.S. President Obama heads to South Africa today on the next leg of his tour of the African continent. Aides close to Obama say the U.S. president hopes to visit ailing former leader Nelson Mandela, who is seriously ill in hospital. But the White House quickly added it would be for Mandela's family to decide whether to grant Obama's request to see him. Obama is in the middle of a three-nation tour of Africa that the White House hopes will compensate for what some view as years of neglect by the administration of America's first black president.
The U.S. Senate has passed an immigration reform bill which would allow up to 11 million undocumented workers in America the chance to become U.S. citizens. But the legislation faces a tough road in the more conservative House of Representatives. Tony Sabine reports.
The yeas on this bill are 68, the nays are 32. The bill as amended is passed.
And with that, the U.S. Senate overwhelmingly approved a landmark immigration bill to give millions of undocumented workers the chance to become American citizens. It was a rare case of Democrats and Republicans working together to get the bill passed, and some of the GOP's most senior members were the legislation's staunchest supporters.
These are people who wanted to come to this country not because they wanted to do anything, but realize the American dream.
Tell me how it's better for America to continue amnesty, which is doing nothing, paying people under the table with no regulation. How does that help the American worker to compete against some person who's being paid under the table? This bill stops that. It brings people out of the shadows on our terms, not theirs.
But many other Republicans in the Senate remained opposed to the bill.
How can we vote for a bill that our own Congressional Budget Office says will reduce average wages in America for 12 years?
I don't believe that the promises made in this bill will ever be kept.
Their opposition was echoed by House Speaker John Boehner, who vowed not to sanction legislation which lacks the support of fellow Republicans, many of whom in the lower house are against the bill in its current format. Any bill in the Republican-controlled lower house is expected to focus heavily on border security and finding immigrants who have overstayed their visas. Still, the White House hailed last night's vote as a step in the right direction. US President Barack Obama has made immigration reform a top priority in his second term and has asked Congress to deliver a bill for him to sign by autumn. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Still ahead, manufacturing defect blamed for Air Bride collapse. The EPD denies allegations that a landfill pollutes a nearby river, and 2 bronze animal heads returned to China. Welcome back. A task force set up to investigate the collapse of an air bridge at the airport in April found that a manufacturing defect led to the accident. Task force members concluded that even with regular maintenance, workers would not have discovered the defect. Joao da Silva reports.
It was a close call for passengers of a Cathay Pacific flight who were already on board when the air bridge collapsed. The investigation by a task force set up to investigate the accident concluded that a manufacturing defect in one of the supporting columns led to the collapse. They say the defect resulted in metal fatigue in the bolts holding the column together, a structural problem that could not have been detected beforehand.
But now that this has happened, I am suggesting that the airport authority should also look at this for extra precaution. This is a rather rare incident.
9 bridges of the same design were suspended after the accident. 5 are back in operation while 4 remain out of service and are undergoing inspection. A report outlining the panel's conclusions is being finalized by the task force. It will soon be submitted to the airport authority, which will then decide on any follow-up action. The airport authority has promised to take up the recommendation to intensify safety checks. These will now include regular inspection of air bridges' structural parts, even though these measures are not included in regular maintenance programs. João da Silva, TVB News.
Peter Chan's defense team today began giving its closing argument in the case involving a suspected forged will of the late tycoon Nina Wang. Chan, who used to go by the name Tony, was again present at the High Court. His defense team argued the 2006 will presented by Chan, the alleged fake, doesn't go against Wang's wishes of giving money to charity because it doesn't leave her fortune to Chan. Chan's lawyer said Wang believed Chan was able to execute her wishes and split the money properly among her relatives. The defense again stressed the notion that Chan's relationship with Wang went beyond that of a feng shui advisor and that the two were intimate.
The Environmental Protection Department has denied Takuleng villagers' accusations that a nearby landfill has been polluting a river in the area. But lawmakers remain skeptical and have taken water samples for testing. Rani Samtani has more.
Residents of Wakengshan village are complaining that the water quality of a nearby river has deteriorated over the past year. This villager says the water is turning yellowish and at times gives off a chemical-like smell. He believes the nearby Takuleng landfill is to blame, but the Environmental Protection Department disagreed.
We observed another area. There's a lateral phenomenon. There's a iron on the surface of the slopes, and during a rainfall situation, the iron will be washed off to the surface water and accumulate in this area.
Lau says as a result, the iron can cause the river water to turn yellow or gray and give off a smell. The department says wastewater from the landfill is discharged in another direction and will not affect the river. Lawmakers Fernando Chung and Frederick Fung visited the area last week. They noted that the water looked clearer today than before.
I think after we visited this place and also made some media attention of the problem, the Environmental Protection Bureau came in, did a lot of cleaning up. I don't know if we could describe it as a cover-up, but definitely they did a major cleanup job here in hopes of explaining to the public that landfill would not pollute the environment, and in so doing, perhaps, trying to get our vote in support of the landfill expansion.
The stream over here is directly connected to the village residents' water supply, which is why they're worried about contamination from the landfill. Lawmakers have collected samples for testing, and they say results will be ready in 5 days' time. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
U.S. authorities have launched an investigation into a retired general, James Cartwright, for allegedly leaking information about America's efforts to disable Iran's nuclear program. The probe revolves around the disclosure of material which documented an American-generated computer virus that was allegedly used to disable computer systems for Iran's atomic program. The New York Times revealed details of the American-led effort in a series of stories last year. That prompted the White House and the FBI to launch a probe to find out how the classified material got to the press. Investigators have now turned their attention to Cartwright, who retired in 2011, but was in charge of the effort to launch a hacking attack on Iran. Venezuelan authorities say they found the wreckage of the crash plane of Italian fashion executive Vittorio Missoni. The 58-year-old Missoni, his wife, 2 friends, and 2 Venezuelan flight crew members disappeared in early January. The plane was found off the Los Roques archipelago at the depth of 76 meters. Authorities were able to positively identify the twin-engine jet as the one Missoni was on by its tail number. Vittorio Missoni was the oldest child of the founders of the fashion house, well known for its exuberant colors, bold stripes, and zigzags. All right, Chris, over to you for sports.
Yeah, lots of color coming up at the Confederations Cup final because Spain defeated Italy to set up a dream final against the host Brazil. Here's Jameson Wong.
The past 2 world champions met in Fortaleza. They were scoreless after 120 minutes. One of the best chances for Spain came in extra time, but Gianluigi Buffon denied Xavi's effort. And a trip to the final in Rio came down to penalty kicks. Leonardo Bonucci missed, and Jesus Navas won it for the Spaniards 7-6. Spain's Andres Iniesta said the truth is Italy played a great game, dominated the match in some parts. We knew that the entire game wouldn't be that tough, and we managed to go to the final match. The world and European champions put their 28-match unbeaten run on the line Sunday at Maracana against host Brazil. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
World number one Novak Djokovic is safely into the third round at Wimbledon. The men's top seed beat American Bobby Reynolds in straight sets. The scores 7-6, 6-3, and 6-1. Djokovic is seeking a second title at the All England club. His chances got a lot better after early round upset losses for Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. Meanwhile, women's top seed Serena Williams is also looking like a lock. Williams routed Caroline Garcia of France in straight sets, dropping only 5 games. The American will next play 42-year-old Kimiko Date Krum of Japan. Formula One news, and Red Bull's Mark Webber has announced he is leaving F1 at the end of the season. Webber will join Porsche's new sports car program and will race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the World Endurance Championship next year. The 36-year-old Australian won 9 races in Formula One. Webber said his decision had nothing to do with his frosty relationship with teammate Sebastian Vettel.
And finally tonight, for those interested in history or culture, it's time to celebrate. 2 bronze animal heads that were looted from Beijing's Imperial Summer Palace during the Second Opium War have finally been returned to the capital city from France. It was an especially exciting day for art historians when the bronze rabbit and mouse heads arrived in China on Tuesday, after 150 years away from home. The National Museum held a donation ceremony today to welcome back the relics and thank the Pinault family for returning them. In April, businessman François-Henri Pinault, whose family owns many top fashion and watch brands, promised to give back the heads at no cost during a trip to China with French President François Hollande. The bronze heads are 2 of 12 zodiac animals sculpted in the Qing dynasty. They used to be part of a water clock fountain in the Summer Palace, spouting water to tell the time. The statues were seized by British and French troops after they burned down the Summer Palace in 1860. In 2009, the mouse and rabbit heads went up for auction in Paris, and after the Chinese government failed to block its sale, a businessman from Fujian won the bid for them at $40 million. He refused to pay afterwards, saying it was a matter of national pride. So Pinault, whose company owns the auction house, bought the 2 heads himself. Apart from the mouse and rabbit heads, the ox, tiger, monkey, pig and horse were earlier returned to China through auction purchases and private donations. The horse head is on display in Macau, while the rest are in Beijing's Polyart Museum. But do keep an eye out for the dragon, snake, sheep, rooster and dog heads, which are still missing, rumoured to be in Taiwan. All right, well, that's the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.
Good night.